Hiya, my name is Jinxit and welcome to episode 2 of my new series, Don't Jinx It. If you've come back to my channel then thank you, it means I might actually be doing something right on here. Anyway, in this episode I'll be giving you a somewhat simple guide on how to create your own persona, as well as giving you some top tips on character creation. I will also be going over some terms or phrases that are commonly used in the community. Some of them you may already understand, however they may also have an alternative meaning regarding furries. So before we begin, I want to remind you that you do not need a persona to be a furry. You can be a furry without one, but having a persona can help you relate to people better within the fandom. Having a furry character can be quite a powerful thing to some people. It allows them to express themselves and even their relationships. But getting your persona isn't as simple as searching edgy fox furry into Google and nabbing the first Velvy artwork you see. No, that's bad and can be considered theft, so don't do that. The same also goes for tracing someone else's art or just generally copying someone else's character traits. Whilst it's good to be inspired by someone else's character, you cannot simply copy theirs. Imagine spending hours designing a character, posting it online, then someone else just swipes it, crosses out the ownership and screams it's theirs despite putting literally no effort into it. It sounds pretty lame, right? Well, that's why I've created this video, to try and help guide and inspire you to create your very own gateway into what's commonly referred to as furry trash. Now, I'll explain some terms used when creating furry characters. In the fandom, most people will have a persona. A persona is usually the character you're most attached to or relate to the most. They'll usually be who you're most recognised as when online, kinda like a mascot. For me, it would be my main persona, Jinx-it. I relate to her the most with both her attitude and general style. I only have the one main persona, but you can have many. The other term commonly used is characters. Characters are kinda like your secondary sonas. You may love them just as much as your persona, but perhaps you don't connect with them as much on a personal level. So you'll still use them online and may even get artwork of them, but they're not as important. I have many characters like Nami, Rory, Pocky and more which I still love and refuse to sell, however I don't use them nearly as much as I use Jinx-it. You can also switch around your characters. If you decide you want to change who your main persona is, then you could do that, no one can stop you. I switch my main personas all the time, though I'm pretty certain Jinx-it, but who knows, that could still change. And despite your characters might not be your persona, there's no one stopping you from progressing with them, and you may even get a fursuit with them. You may notice that people also refer to their characters as OCs. This means original character, which typically is a character that they created themselves and not an adopt, though adopts are something that I'll get onto later in this video. Now, you'll probably want to start creating your own furry character, right? Well, to start you off, you'll probably want to choose what species they'll be. The species is basically what animal you want them to be, and I use the term animal loosely because at this stage in the fandom, there's so many different types of species that people use for their characters, which I wouldn't really class as animals, but more as fictional species. Now, you can keep it simple and just use your favourite animal, whether it be a cat, dog, rabbit, ostrich, whatever. But you also need to understand the following terms of feral and anthro. Now, feral would normally describe an animal that is untamed, but regarding furry characters, it usually means that they're on all fours, following the actual anatomy traits of the real-life creature. Whereas anthro, shortened from anthropomorphic, means the characters are stood on its hind legs and follows more human-like anatomy. These terms are important to understand when you're designing your character. Other species terms that are used which you may come across are scaly, synthetics, and kimono. Scaly usually refers to the characters that aren't really furry, such as like lizards, dragons, sharks, etc. Synthetic means characters that are more robotic than furry. A good example of this would be protogens and my own species, Solakers. These are still considered furry characters, but they have a bit of a sci-fi vibe to them. Now, kimono isn't really a type of furry, I guess it's more of an art style. But usually kimono characters will follow these traits. They'll normally have large anime eyes, small muzzles, and those thick thighs. Now, despite all these types of furries not really counting as the generic type of furry, these still count as furry characters, so don't be afraid to experiment. If you decide that you like the look of two animals, such as a goat and a cat, but can't decide on one or the other, you can create your own hybrid species. This is where you take selected traits of the animals and combine them to make your own unique character. I see a lot of people do this, and the most classic combination that I've seen would be a cat and a rabbit, or more commonly known as the cabbit. And it's easy to see why people like this hybrid, as they do work really well together. Now, if none of that suits you, you can even select one of the community's own fictional species. Many creative minds in the fandom have become inspired and created their very own original species. I myself am a bit of a hoarder of species. I own 4 original species and co-own another. But bear in mind, if you're going to use one of these species, you're going to have some rules to follow. There are 3 common terms used in the community relating to fandom created species, and these are open, semi-open, and closed. Open means that the species is completely open to the public. You can create your own, just ensure you follow the species rules. A few of the most commonly used open species are Dutch Angel Dragons, or DADs, Protogens, and Manakits. These are all free to make and relatively easy to find information on, but as I mentioned, they do have some rules which you must follow. An example of this is in the Dutch Angel Dragon species, your Dutchie cannot have a ring pattern around the muzzle like Telephones, the owner of the species, as this is a part of their lore. Although no one can physically stop you from doing this, it will cause a lot of controversy on your design and may lead to some unnecessary drama, so I highly recommend that you respect the species creators' wishes and follow them. Semi-open species are similar to open species, however the owner will decide who or when people are allowed to make characters as a part of that species. An example of this is my favourite original species known as Frigid Peak Dragons. These will have a make your own event every now and again where you design your own frigid, submit it to the creator and await for approval. This method is very useful for ensuring that all designs follow the rules. Closed species are just that. They are closed. Only the species creator and selected individuals can make their own characters as a part of the species. You cannot make them yourselves without specific permission to do so, and usually the only way to obtain them is through pre-made designs that will be sold online. A popular example of this would be Primogens. They are a closed species and have official designs for sales during certain times of the year. Now that you know about the different types of species, you'll want to decide on a colour palette for your character. To start off, you can just use your favourite colour, but one singular colour isn't really enough to make your character unique. I personally recommend using at least 3 different colours or shades of a colour. This makes it less likely for your design to be stolen, and if you're struggling to come up with a colour palette, you can find many online, or even create your own mood board of images which can help inspire your design. So remember, if you're basing your design off a product or a company, be careful about using official logos, as depending on how you use that Sona, it could possibly get you into some legal trouble. I doubt they would sue you or anything like that, but just be careful. Now, for some of my top tips when it comes to colour, when I design a character, and this refers to any of my characters as well as pre-made adopts, I usually stick to this principle. I use 2 to 3 colours for the character's main body and fur patterns, and then use a contrasting bright colour for their smaller features like horns, paws, mouth as an accent. You can see this in Nami's design, with her main colours being black, white and orange, and her accent colour being green. I find the small detail can be very effective and makes them a little more unique. But when you start designing your character, you'll need to think about whether you're going to want them as a suit one day, even though it may not happen until very far away in the distant future. This means you'll need to be cautious about certain design choices. An example of this would be the classic white versus black. White, although it looks great on character design for things like paws and tails, will get dirty very easily. This means you have to spend a lot of your suiting days ensuring that you wash those toes. Whereas black doesn't show dirt as easily, so you won't have to worry about them as much. You'll also need to think about those markings on your suit. Is it going to be easy to get those patterns made into a wearable suit? I find that gradients look amazing on digital artwork, but when it comes to getting a suit with gradients, it's near on impossible, and if it is possible, it's going to cost you a lot more than you anticipated. I absolutely adore some of the gradient designs I find online, but I'm put off by the fact that I wouldn't be able to wear them as a suit, which really sucks because the designs are always so cool. And on the topic of markings, if you have a lot of small shapes and patterns on your design, it will make it a little harder to find a maker who's able to do that detail, as it will affect the price. I recommend using larger and clearer patterns which can still be just as effective. These are only suggestions, but just ensure you don't clutter up the pattern of your design too much if you plan to get it made as a suit. So, now you've decided on your character species, colours and markings, you'll probably want something physical to represent them. This can be from something as simple as text to a fully fledged reference sheet that shows absolutely every angle of the character. It's important to have some form of reference if you want to get artwork of that character or even just take part in events online. I recommend that at the very least you come up with a written document that explains the character's species, gender, body type, colours and markings. I will also leave a link to my own custom character creation sheet which you can fill in yourself. But be prepared, if this is the only form of reference you have, some artists may refuse your commission as they will prefer a drawn reference sheet. A reference sheet normally portrays the character in at least a full body front view image that clearly shows their markings. When it comes to having a drawn reference sheet, there are many options available. For one, if you can draw, that's great! You can draw your own character the way you envision it. But if you're not as confident when it comes to drawing, you can use one of the many free to use bases online. A base is essentially like a colouring book. You have the liner, which you can colour in however you want, but just ensure that you follow the rules of the base regarding what you can and cannot do with it, as well as crediting the artist of the base when you post it online. If you're unsure who created the base, you can easily pop it into reverse image search in Google, which should help you find it immediately. These bases were kindly donated for this video by Crepet, who will also be talking about later in this video. But there are also pay-to-use bases. These are not free, and you must pay the artist to use these lineups, otherwise it can be considered theft. Always ensure that you check whether it's free or not, otherwise someone may accuse you of something that you didn't mean to do. But if a base doesn't suit you, you can always commission an artist. If you don't know what a commission is, it's essentially paying an artist to draw what you want in their style. It's a great way to support artists of the community and get help when creating your own character. But if after all this you're really struggling to create your own character, don't worry, us artists got you covered. Many artists in the fandom create pre-made character designs known as adopts. These are characters which are purely made for sale. I create adopts all the time as I adore character creation and it's very rewarding to see people purchasing my designs. Adopts are very good to help inspire people who may not be as confident creating designs as others. Adopts can be made completely from scratch or even made from bases. But you must always be wary if you're buying an adopt from someone who isn't the original artist or creator, as it might be stolen. I recommend for one, if you're creating an adopt, watermark it, write your name on it and cover the art so it makes it incredibly hard for someone to steal it, and only send the unwatermarked version to the buyer. If you then go to purchase an adopt and the seller can't get you the unwatermarked version, assume that it's stolen and stay away from that user. But if they try to assure you that it's not stolen even with the watermark, ask them for proof of purchase. If they can't show you this either, then you don't want to be trading with them. I sincerely hope that this video was useful. I don't claim to know everything about this fandom, but I am pretty active in it online, so I know how stressful these seemingly simple things can be, and I want to try and help and inspire others along the way. Which brings me on to my featured artist of this episode, Crepet from Crepet's Draw. I mentioned her briefly earlier in this video thanks to the basis she provided me. She does amazing digital artwork and I even got to do an art trade with her recently. She seems very nice, dedicated and hardworking and I admire so much. Her style is just as unique as her characters and you should go check out her work. I'll be leaving links to all her social media in the description. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons. As I keep mentioning, I do plan to add more to my Patreon soon, which will be linked in the description with the rest of my social media links, as well as an invite to the Jinxit community Discord server. Thank you all so much for watching and remember, don't jinx it.